What's going on, y'all? It's Matthew here, and welcome to this video. So today we're going to be covering three things, all right? And the first one is, one, why did I actually become an engineer? Number two is, why is it that I started to read? And number three is the first lesson that I actually learned once I started reading. So the reason why I actually became an engineer is because I grew up with a single mom and she was working 2 to 3 jobs. And one year I remember I asked her, I was like, hey mom, the iPod Touch just came out. My friend KJ just got it. Could you get me the iPod or could I get it for Christmas? And she said no. And I was like, okay, well, you know what? At least I asked. But a couple of days later, she ends up calling me into the living room and she was like, hey Matthew, I want to show you something. So I go into the living room, I sit down next to her. She has her laptop open, and at the time I didn't know, but it was an Excel spreadsheet. And she said, "Look, I really would like for you to get this iPod for you, but you've been doing really good in school, but I can't actually afford it. I can't get it right now because we are barely making ends meet, or I'm barely making ends meet." And so I was like, okay. Well, I kind of understand that, basically looking at that spreadsheet, I saw a lot of red at that time. And what it caused me to think when I went back to the room, I said, all right, look, if this is what my mom is doing, she's working 2 or 3 jobs, she's missing time with me so she can provide for us, and she is still in the red. I'm going to make sure that I go out there and I do something that's going to be able to bring me a lot of income. And that's when I ended up talking to my best friend's dad. They had the nice cars, the nice houses. My friend always had the new games coming out. So I talked to his dad and I was like, man, what is it that you actually do? And he said that he was an engineer. So I automatically assumed that by becoming an engineer, that was going to allow for me to be rich. That was going to be my exit. So I went to school, graduated with my engineering degree, started working, and that's when I found out this is not the business. I do not want to be doing this. When I was in school, I was putting stuff together, taking things apart, being creative. And then I just go to college and now I'm just sitting behind the desk, going to meetings after meeting to have another meeting about having another meeting. And I just didn't like that. So what I started to do is I started to actually go out there and do some research. Like, man, this has to be different. What are some ways to earn money? A lot of people start talking about earning money online using social media and a lot of different things. Well, what I end up discovering after doing a lot of trial and error is that the first thing that I needed to do is I needed to find out what it is that rich people actually do. So I was listening to a YouTube video one day. I believe it was Jim Rohn. And when I was listening to Jim Rohn, he was saying that if you want to change your life, you have to start investing in yourself. And the first investment that you need to make is you need to start purchasing books. And he said, I started purchasing books. And the second thing is you need to start reading those books. So I went and started purchasing books. And then I ended up starting to read books. And I started to hear this book a lot, which is actually Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I started to read and I started to realize that there are a lot of things that rich people do that poor and middle class people do not know about. And when you actually decide that you want to become rich, you do not become rich first when it comes to your thought or through your physical money or the money that you have, but you actually become rich first through your thought process. So now, now that I understand, okay, rich people, they start reading, wealthy people, they read. What is the first lesson that I actually learned? Well, the first lesson that I learned from reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad is the fact that rich people don't work for money. Now, I know that sounds very strange. And honestly, it was very strange to me because I'm like, look, all my life I was told you got to go out there, you got to do a day's wages is equal to a day's pay, or a day's hard work equal to a day's pay. And I was like, man, I got to go get a job. I got to be able to do this. I got to work hard to be able to go make money. But I actually discovered that rich people do not work for money. Now, why is it that rich people don't work for money? Well, as I started to dive deeper into this, the reason why rich people do not work for money is because of the fact that they understand that this statement is not true. Now, you may be sitting there thinking like, Matthew, well, what statement is that? Well, I'm glad that you asked. Basically, this is a clock, and this is obviously representation of money, but rich people understand that money is not equal to time. And what I mean by that is that so many times I was told growing up, and maybe even you were told growing up, that you have to go and you have to work hard, you have to put your time in to be able to get paid. You know, they say, you may have heard things like time is money and all those different things like that, which is basically what this is saying: time is equal to money. But rich people know that this is not true. Time is not equal to money. If you really want to have a closer to a true statement, this is more so what this would look like. And rich people understand this sentence, which is time is infinitely greater than money. And why is that? You may have that question, Matthew, why is time greater than money? Well, the reason being is because if you lose 5 minutes, all right, if you lose 5 minutes, you cannot get that 5 minutes back. However, if you lose $5, you can always get that $5 back. You know, time is the most valuable asset that we have on this earth, that we do not know how much of it we have left, but we spend it every single day. So rich people understand that time is not equal to money. So with that being said, you may not be thinking like, okay, if time is equal to money, well, how do rich people get money? That is a great question. Well, what rich people do is, instead of exchanging their time for money, what they start to do is they start to have ideas. And those ideas allow for them to go and make money. Now, when they have these ideas, what type of ideas do they have? Well, generally they would go out, they would look in the workplace or in the marketplace, you know, maybe helping business owners or maybe finding a huge problem that they can solve. And then once they're able to solve that problem, then whatever idea that is, they're able to make money off of that idea. Let me prove it to you. If you think about Jeff Bezos was thinking like, man, you know, I see that this internet thing is going to be rising up. What if people were able to make purchases online? Well, what did he start off with? He started off with one product, and that was selling books. And he kept with it. People were ordering books offline, but he didn't actually turn a profit until 10 years after he actually started Amazon. But now Jeff Bezos works if he wants to work. He has many people working for him. You know, Elon Musk, you have the same thing. Mark Zuckerberg, you have the same thing. You have many people that have ideas that they have actually ran with, and they were able to make a lot of money by being able to think of different ideas. So if you desire to become rich, and this is what I had to determine, if I desire to become rich, what is the first thing that I must do? Well, the first thing I must do is I have to say, okay, I believe this to be true. I believe that time is not equal to money. I had to go and I had to write down all the negative things that I heard about money. Money is the root of all evil, which that verse doesn't say it. It says, for the love of money is the root of all evil. I had to get rid of time is equal to money. Had to write that down. I had to get rid of all rich people are evil, because if you want to be rich, you can't think that rich people are evil and want to be rich. Like, that doesn't actually go together. So once I started writing down all these ideas that I heard about money, and, you know, does money grow on trees? And really, technically, money does grow on trees because it's paper. So I had to write all these things down. And once I wrote them down, now I said, okay, I do not believe these things anymore. This is not serving me to where I want to actually go. So now I have to take on some new ideas. And that is where reading books and actually studying what rich people do. There was a quote that I heard, and it said that if you want to become rich, there are 2 sentences that you must remember. The first one is, you must study what poor people do, and whatever you do, do not do those things anymore. And the second sentence is, you must study what rich people do, and whatever you do, you need to do whatever rich people are doing. Now, this is not to say that you just need to go out there and be doing any and everything you see people do. There are some constraints to this. My constraints are I will follow what a rich person says as long as what they are doing is legal, is ethical, and it is morally right. If it does not fall within those three things or have all three of those checked off, I do not follow it. So make sure that if you desire to go out there and be rich, if you desire to have your financial situation change, you are going to have to change in your mindset, as I said earlier, and you're going to have to come up with some new beliefs. And really, you don't even have to determine what those new beliefs are. You just need to start getting knowledge, start reading books to be able to have a different idea when it comes to thinking about money. So I hope that this video was helpful. If so, make sure you leave it a like, and I will catch you in the next video where we will talk about lesson number 2 that I actually learned from reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad.